Chatters. I'm Nat.
And I'm Kat, and welcome to the Crime Chat. I am your forensic femme fatale, Natalie's your true crime addict connoisseur.
We're just two normal girls obsessed with dark crimes, evil minds, and occasionally the unknown.
And here is your disclaimer, chatters. The following Crime Chat contains adult content and will have graphic, violent, and extremely disturbing scenarios today. So your listener discretion is superly duperly advised.
Yes, you've been warned, but before we get into today's Crime Chat, Kat, what have you done?
Well, it's been a little bit since we recorded. I have gone to Missouri and came back. We had a death in the family, but it was nice to see family and everything up there. And it snowed while we were up there, and apparently brought the snow back because then it snowed here. And actually, on the day that it snowed here, it was warmer in Missouri than it was here.
Really?
But you got some really cold weather down there too.
Yeah, like 40s.
Yeah. That's crazy.
It was crazy.
For South Florida?
We had to put the fireplaces on because it got so flippin' cold, and we were afraid to turn the heater on because in Florida, you never turn your heater on.
No.
And we're afraid to. So we were like, let's just put the fireplace on.
But we had a good trip. It was Chris's mom's birthday also, so happy birthday, Mary.
Happy birthday.
Yeah. It was nice to see family for an unfortunate circumstance. But other than that, when we were up there, we got his mom to start watching the TV show Ghosts, the comedy.
Yeah.
You know what? Yeah. You know what I'm talking about? I think it's on like Fox or something. It's really good. It's so good. Like watching it again. It's so funny. And then the last time we recorded, I told you about the Skeletor movie, right?
Yes, you did.
Well, I was wrong. It is a He-Man movie. It's called He-Man and Masters of the Universe. I started looking into it, and it looked like it was going to be Chris Hemsworth playing He-Man, which, perfect. That would be a perfect fit.
Yes.
But it's not.
Oh, who is it?
They did not cast him. It's a guy named Nicholas Galitzine. I kind of don't recognize the name. But yes, Jared Leto is playing Skeletor. And Idris Elba is in it. Awesome.
I love him. I love that man. Oh my Lord. He's so like this he's like the full package. He really is.
You know, he is. Yeah, he's playing the Man-at-Arms, so the second to He-Man. And She-Ra is in the work too.
Really?
Yes. A live action of the She-Ra. I think that's coming out after, like they're getting all the He-Man stuff done now, and then down the road they'll do a She-Ra. Probably, I'm assuming at some point doing a crossover. Maybe. Okay. Maybe not. And I was listening to another, critic or whatever coming about the movie, and they were just slamming Jared Leto, and I'm just like, you are haters. I think he's great.
Yes, he really is good. You know what? They're really missing the mark on a remake, though. I see that you're saying they're doing the He-Man, the She-Ra. You know what they should do would be a huge hit? What? Xena, the warrior princess. Yes. Come on.
Oh, God. What was her name?
Lucy.
Lucy Liu? No. Lucy Lawless.
Lawless. Oh,
yes.
Come on.
Yes. Yes.
I don't know who would play her because she's got those are big shoes to fill, but
iconic.
She's iconic. Yeah. Oh my Lord, that would be great. Oh my God.
Well, I did finish watching The Terror, and I loved it. It's sad that it's you watched it?
I watched it, yes.
What did you think?
It was amazing.
Okay, good. It was amazing. It's easy. I'm easy to please. I'm not always the best critic, so.
No, it was amazing. It was gritty. It was horrifying. And I love the fact that after you watched it, you can go Google the actual shifts.
About what happened. Yeah.
Yes, and they actually, as horrifying as it was, they pretty much stayed true to the story outside of the paranormal stuff.
Right.
The big beast or whatever. But take that big beast out of this. I mean, they told the story of what happened with the sickness and the disease and all this other stuff happening and the cannibalism. It's there. It's in there.
And they got the evidence of the cannibalism from the bodies that they found. I think it's like 5 or 6 people they've been able to positively identify of their bodies based on genetic genealogy. And there were marks on the body that were indicative of cannibalism, like the tools and, and that kind of thing. But yeah. Oh, good. One more thing. Like Chris and I watched a movie last night. It came out in 2020. I never heard of it, but it's one of those like apocalyptic, like end of the world type of thing. Think the movie San Andreas.
Never saw it.
Okay. Well, think that disaster, but on like 10 times level. So the movie is called Greenland,
Okay.
and it stars Gerard Butler.
Mm-hmm.
And in the character that his wife plays is the character that was in Deadpool, that was Deadpool's love interest, and
Oh,
I don't know
yeah.
her name off the top of my head. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, oh my God, that was such a good movie. We
Really?
watched it last night, and I was like, oh wow, it was really, really good. Basically, an asteroid kind of comes in. It was extinction level destruction.
Okay.
And they had people going underground, and only certain people were selected to go underground who had certain capabilities like construction,
Mm-hmm.
medical, that would be able to kind of help repopulate
Mm-hmm.
the world. But it was really, really good and highly believable. Like, I think it's totally plausible something like that would happen. I mean, it's happened before.
Yeah.
All the dinosaurs died.
Yeah.
So, yeah, crazy. But it was really, really good. I recommend that. And that's about it.
Okay.
We got to catch up. We haven't recorded in a bit.
I know. I know.
What about you?
Okay, so I know you're not a gamer. Not that I'm a gamer, but I do enjoy games. And after I've been working long hours, and lately when I kind of like unwind, it's 9 o'clock at night. That's what I was thinking. So I usually
Mhm.
pull up a game, and on YouTube they'll have walkthroughs because you can waste a lot of money
Yeah.
at these stores, at the game stores.
Yeah.
So I try to do the YouTube thing to figure out which ones I like, and then I'll spend, it's like $70 a game. So I'm like, I'm not buying it unless I know I like it.
Right.
And the reason why I even have the game consoles, because I was looking forward
Mhm.
to We Harvest Shadows, a game
Mhm.
that the demo came out maybe a year
Mhm.
ago. Still waiting for the game.
Oh, Amanda on Morning Crime, she mentioned that game.
We Harvest
And
Shadows.
she also played the demo, and she said that she's waiting for it to come out. Yeah.
That's crazy. So I subscribed to the creator's YouTube, and he had a live.
Mm.
So I joined the live. Like, I didn't join the video,
Mhm.
but I was chatting with him while he's doing his live. He's actually creating segments in the game,
Mm.
and he's telling everybody, and everybody's asking the same question that I was. When is it getting released?
Mhm.
Where is it getting
Mhm.
released? And he broke the news to us, and he's like, "Guys, I'm sorry. It's going to take me another 2 years."
Oh.
And it was silence,
Oh.
like the chat just stopped. All of our
Oh.
hearts got crushed. And he's like, I am really trying because, and you know what? It took him a year just to create the demo.
Mhm. Mm.
Kat, I'm telling you, like, there is a reason why, like, adults are going out to buy the game console,
Mhm.
because this game is so interesting
Mhm.
because it deals with mental health, and it just having these things that are very
Mhm.
haunting to an adult, especially to an adult.
Yeah.
Like, so I would recommend you go to YouTube and watch the walkthrough
Mhm.
of the demo.
Okay.
You can see it. Like, you could see, like, it really takes you in a very dark place, and it's just, yeah. So I have to wait. Amanda and I have to wait 2 years.
Oh, the last time she talked about it, I don't think she had a estimate like when it'll be
Yeah.
out, but I'm sure
Mm,
she is disappointed.
yeah. Yeah. The other thing is, I started playing again Resident Evil,
Mm.
realizing that I cannot play something like this. Too much killing. And you know what? It's not that I like the shooter games and
Mhm.
stuff like that, but it's too much crazy ass apocalyptic
Mhm.
zombie killing, and I just don't have, like, I get overwhelmed with
Mm.
all the killing.
Mm.
But other than that, like, honestly, that's all I've done. Like, played a couple of games, fell asleep out of exhaustion. But that's about it.
Okay.
Mhm.
Well, today's story is a chatter request, and it's from a very
Yay.
special chatter.
Oh.
Not just any chatter, my husband, Chris.
Mm.
And I decided to do this story now because when this episode airs, the next
Huh?
day is his birthday. And
Oh my
I
God.
told him last night or the night before, I said, "Hey, remember that story that you requested?" He didn't remember it because it was from like a year, maybe 2 years ago. He didn't
Okay.
remember it. And I started saying, "Well, this and this and this." He's like, "Okay, yeah, 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 that sounds familiar." I said, "Well, we're doing it. And oh, by the way, it's gonna come out on your birthday or the
Aw.
day before your birthday. So happy birthday, babe."
Yes. Happy birthday. Oh my God. That's going to be cool. So you got to play it in the background on his birthday.
We'll see.
Well, Kat, I don't know what you're going over. I don't know what Chris requested. I have no idea.
Mm.
And I asked you what you wanted me to do as an intro. And you were like, can you do some research on mental illness and the connection to violent crime?
Mhm.
And you also mentioned cover dismemberment.
Mhm.
And I'm like, okay, like that is a big that is a big brush that you just stroked around and said, hey, mental illness and all of the violent crime and dismemberment. Oh, throw
Yeah.
that in there.
Yeah.
So I got to dismemberment. I did include it at the end
Okay.
because there was just so much there with everything else.
Mhm.
So, what is mental illness?
Mm.
Mental illness is often misunderstood, misrepresented, and feared. It affects millions of people worldwide, and yet misconceptions shape how society views those who have it.
Mhm.
But what exactly is mental illness? And does it truly connect to extreme forms of violence,
Mm.
such as murder and dismemberment?
Mm.
Mental illness is a broad term for conditions that affect a person's thinking, emotions, mood, and behavior. These conditions can be mild or severe and can interrupt daily life. According to the American Psychiatric Association, the
Mhm.
APA, mental illnesses are diagnosed based on symptoms that cause significant distress or interfere in daily activities. Common types of
Yes.
mental disorders. Mental illnesses fall into different categories, each with unique symptoms and challenges. First one, psychotic disorder. Schizophrenia, a disorder that affects thinking, leading to hallucinations, delusions, and confusion.
Mhm.
Next one is schizoaffective disorder, a combination of schizophrenia symptoms with mood disturbances like depression and mania.
Mm.
Number two, mood disorders. Major depressive disorder, MDD, persistent sadness, loss of interest, and difficulty functioning in daily life.
Mhm.
Next one is bipolar disorder, extreme mood swings that include high energy mania and low energy depression episodes.
Mhm.
Next one, personality disorders. Antisocial personality disorder, ASPD, is a lack of regard for others' rights, often associated with criminal behavior.
Oh.
Next one that falls under this is the borderline personality disorder, BPD.
Mm.
This is intense emotions, unstable relationships, and impulsive actions. Another one is dissociative identity disorder, DID, previously called multiple personality disorder.
Mhm.
This is where a person has two or more distinct identities.
Mhm.
Another one that falls under this is dissociative amnesia. This is memory loss due to trauma or stress.
Oh, okay.
And that I
That
think,
happens. Like, when you have a
yeah.
that significant of trauma,
Mhm.
oftentimes people have a difficulty remembering details or remembering specific things, but, I mean, it makes sense,
Yeah.
you know?
And
You
isn't
unconsciously, you've kinda locked that away in your Pandora's box, and it's never coming out.
yes, isn't there like a treatment for it that like it's like a pseudoscience where you can go through hypnosis
Hypnosis. Yeah, yeah.
to either bring those thoughts or memories back to life? I've seen it in movies. I don't know if I don't know.
No, I've heard of it, yeah, yeah.
All right. Well, number 5, obsessive compulsive and related disorders. Obsessive compulsive disorder, OCD, probably the most famous,
Mhm.
is persistent and unwanted thoughts, obsessions, leading to repetitive behaviors, also known as compulsions.
Mm.
Number 6, impulse control and conduct disorders. Intermittent explosive disorder is IED, and this is the sudden and aggressive outbursts that people may have.
That's
And we
a
all
bad
suffer from that.
acronym for it, IED. Because that is explosive.
Wait, like military wise, that's what they call it?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Improvised explosive device.
Okay.
IED, I mean, people probably mostly associate it with, like, terrorists
Yes. Yeah.
and putting an IED in a car, on a
Right.
person, on
Right.
the road. There's different trigger mechanisms for it.
Do you think they would have changed the letters? Like, I don't know. Hmm. All right. Well, what falls under number 6, the impulse control, is also pyromania. This is an urge to set fires, and then kleptomania, which is an impulse to steal unnecessary items.
I told you about that when I was a kid. I had this bad habit of just of stealing things from stores, from people.
Yeah. You had an IED?
I had a klepto IED.
Okay. So, well, you know what? I think sometimes as a young person, or not even a young adult, they may experience things like this
Mm.
more for a thrill,
Mhm.
not necessarily that they are, dealing with some type of illness, but, it's just the thrill of getting away with something like that, which is kind of part of growing up, I think, right?
I was told no, and I didn't take no for an answer. I
There you
don't
go.
know.
Okay. Now, Number 7, neurological development disorders. So this could be autism.
Mm-hmm.
This is a disorder affecting communication and social skills.
Mm-hmm.
And the next one is attention deficit hyperactive disorder, ADHD, which is difficulty focusing, hyperactivity, and impulsivity. So, yeah, I know a
Hmm.
lot of adults that have this.
Hmm. Yes.
Right here on the drama. Number 8, substance related and addictive disorder.
Hmm.
Disorders caused by excessive alcohol or drug use.
Oh, yeah.
Now,
I never thought about that actually. Like, I guess I mean, not physiological, but like the neurological damage that it could cause.
mhm.
I never
Oh,
thought about
yeah.
that. Yeah.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
Up north, when I was working with a lot of people that were recovering,
Mm-hmm.
there was something that what they called a wet brain.
Mm,
Have you ever heard of it?
mm-mm.
Yeah, the doctors will call it wet brain, and I don't know the technical term for it. I mean I can look it up, but it's when their brain is basically so destroyed from the alcoholism that they can't really their words are very slurred,
Sure.
even though they're sober. They're sober, they're
Yeah.
clean,
Yeah.
but it's just taken such a toll on them that they're kind of, they're always in that state of looking like they're lethargic,
Mm-hmm.
like it's
That makes
and
sense,
the doc
actually. Yeah.
well, okay, so mental illness and violent crime. The reality. A common myth is that people with mental illnesses are more likely to commit violent crimes. However, the research shows that that is false, Kat.
We've talked about
False.
that before about people who plead guilty by reason of insanity and how difficult
Mm-hmm.
that is to prove in court.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes. Because they're lying half of the time. Lying. Okay. Well, here are some key statistics. Only 3 to 5% of violent crimes in the US are committed by individuals with severe mental illness. This is according to the American Psychological Association.
Mm,
Less than 10% of homicides involve people with diagnosed mental
mm,
disorders. This is according to the National Institute of Justice.
okay.
1 in 5 US adults experiences mental
Mm,
illness each year,
mm,
according to the National Institute of Mental Health. And people with mental illnesses are 10 times more likely to be the victims of a violent crime
sure.
rather than the perpetrator.
Yeah.
And that is according to the American Journal of Public
I can
Health.
see that.
I could see that.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, I'm wondering too, like, the reason why people think, oh, they must be mentally ill is because maybe they don't understand the difference between right and wrong. And we'll kind of get to that a
Right.
little bit in the story too.
Okay, cool. All right. Well, Kat, are all murderers mentally ill?
Me.
Let's look at it from a different perspective, shall we? No, the majority of people who commit homicide do not have a
Mm,
diagnosed mental illness.
mm,
Murder is often driven by other factors, including
mm-hmm,
personal motives, economic struggles, substance abuse, and
mm-hmm,
revenge.
mm.
What mental disorders are common amongst violent offenders? Well, let's dive into it. While some people with mental illnesses are not violent, some disorders are more
Mm,
frequently associated with
right.
violent crime.
Yeah.
First one, antisocial personality disorder. We just mentioned that before.
Mm-hmm,
And this is common among serial killers and repeat offenders. The traits of this diagnosis is the lack of empathy, manipulative behavior, impulsivity, disregard for social rules.
mm-hmm,
Some examples of this would be Ted Bundy displayed symptoms of ASPD. He showed a classic psychopathy traits, but was not legally insane. So,
mm-hmm,
doesn't mean you're insane, but he
mm-hmm,
did show these traits.
mm-hmm.
Now, up to 50% of prison populations have ASPD
Okay.
compared to 1 to 4% in the general population. So,
That's
yes,
an interesting stat. Yeah.
yes. So it is common,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not a cause of why they're committing these, but it is common for them to have this
Right. Yeah.
ASPD. Number 2, schizophrenia. When untreated,
Mm-hmm.
it could become very severe.
Mm.
This rarely leads to violence except in the extreme cases of paranoid and delusions.
Okay.
So, the traits of schizophrenia are hallucinations, delusions, disorganized thinking.
Mm-hmm.
The person that comes to mind, even though I'm going to give you an example, but Business comes to mind when I think of
Oh
this.
yeah.
Another example is Vince Lee in 2008, a man with untreated schizophrenia who, in a psychotic state, killed a passenger
Oh
on a Greyhound bus. This is oh my God, do you remember that case? The
no.
Greyhound oh, yeah,
No.
Cat. Bailey Sarian went over this. This is a real
Noted.
bloody one.
Okay.
That case is a bad
Mm.
case. very bad case.
Mm.
Now, this is only 0.3% of people with schizophrenia who commit violent crimes. So it's not,
Yeah.
Number 3, bipolar disorder. Manic episodes or psychotic features. Rarely linked to murder, but can contribute to extreme cases.
Mm-hmm.
The traits of bipolar disorder are extreme mood swings, impulsive actions. Now, an example of this, some offenders exhibit manic rage or impulsive aggression, but violence is not a typical symptom of bipolar disorder.
Mm-hmm.
2.8% of US adults have bipolar disorder with low violent crime rates.
Okay.
Number 4, intermittent explosive disorder, the IED. So, like I said before, it's linked to uncontrollable rage.
Mm-hmm.
Traits are sudden outbursts and aggression. This affects about 2.7% of the population, but is often undiagnosed.
Sure.
So,
Yeah.
examples of this would be crimes of passion or domestic violence.
Mm-hmm.
So, number 5, dissociative identity disorder, DID. So, this is rare. This rarely involves like crimes of murder.
Mm-hmm.
Most people with DID are not violent. Examples, some legal cases have cited DID as a defense, but
Mm-hmm.
its link to murder is highly debatable. I guess it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't make them aggressive enough if you're suffering from
That's the
this.
multiple personality, the one that was
Right.
renamed, right? Yeah.
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 So, what increases the risk of violence? Substance abuse,
Mm-hmm.
drug and alcohol usage, the lack of treatment. Many violent individuals have undiagnosed or untreated conditions.
Mm-hmm.
Another one, childhood trauma or abuse.
Mm-hmm.
Very common amongst some of the craziest serial killers we went over.
Mm-hmm.
Another one is co-occurring disorders, ASPD, and substance abuse equals high risk of violent crime. So you can add honestly, you can take the list of disorders that we just went over.
Mm-hmm.
You could sprinkle in some substance abuse and you can literally bring it over to violent crime because substance abuse,
Sure.
it's just
Yeah.
that.
Well,
What?
and a lot of times if people don't realize that they have an illness,
Mm-hmm,
it doesn't go treated,
mm-hmm.
and so they rely on drugs or alcohol to help them cope,
Yes.
with not being able to understand what's going on,
Yeah.
you know, in the
Self-medicating.
noggin. Yeah.
And then if they're on medication and then they're still abusing substances, I mean, it is a recipe for disaster. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, substance abuse, definitely a trigger for a lot of these things, unfortunate events. Okay, so
Yeah.
let's get into dismemberment. So, dismemberment and its
Oh,
psychological aspects, Kat. Why not? Let's go. Okay.
let's do it.
So, dismemberment is the act of cutting off a body part,
Mm-hmm.
often to dispose of evidence. It is one of the most extreme forms of violence with varied motivations behind it. Now,
Mm-hmm.
technical term used by police and medical professionals, because I'm like, all right, it's got to be different. It can't be just dismemberment for everything, right?
Yeah. Yeah. There's different phases.
Yeah, so post mortem dismemberment, this is the act of dismembering a body after death, usually to cover up a crime.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's the ante mortem dismemberment. This occurs while the victim is still alive, often linked to extreme torture or sadistic tendencies. This reminds me of vivisection. Do you remember during Unit 731 episode, like in
Oh,
season 1?
yeah.
Vivisection is when you are basically doing an autopsy on somebody who's
Yeah.
alive.
Yeah. Oh, that's a throwback. Yeah.
Next one is defensive dismemberment, done to dispose of a body and avoid detection. So, like the mob.
Mm.
Another one is offensive dismemberment. I guess this is more of a police term, carried out
Mm-hmm.
for a sadistic pleasure or psychological compulsion. And then the how do you say that word?
Necromantic.
Necromantic. Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, like necromancy.
Like
Oh, okay.
like necrophilia. Yeah.
Ew, ew. Okay, so necromantic or ritualistic dismemberment performed
Mhm.
due to delusions or cultural rituals or religious beliefs.
Speaking of necro, did you
Mm,
see there's a post going around that I wish I could remember where it was. It was in another country and it's
yeah.
the maybe Vikings, but they were necro pants where somebody would die
Huh?
and they would cut off their skin and then wear these necro pants. It was like a form of like magic or wizardry or something like that. And this was like 16, 1700s. But there's one pair of necro pants that is still around and it includes the junk and all.
In a museum?
Yes.
Wow.
It's somewhere in Europe. It's somewhere in Europe. I want to say like I want to
Okay.
say Sweden. I could be wrong, but yeah. Search necro
Okay,
pants.
so How
It's fucking
messed
insane.
up are our Google searches that necropants is coming up in the feed, okay?
Popped up on my algorithm.
That's I'm gonna now I have to look it up though. So okay.
I know.
All right. So dismemberment is relatively rare compared to the other forms of homicide. Studies show that less than 1% of all homicides involve some form of body mutilation or dismemberment. However, it is more commonly seen in cases involving serial killers or organized crime, like I said before. So, yeah,
Mhm.
mob.
Cut off their fingers. There's no
Right,
fingerprints. Take their teeth out.
right,
Yeah.
right.
No PID.
So, is it safe to say that all people who commit dismemberment are mentally ill? Well, technically, not necessarily. I don't know. I don't know, but yeah, I don't necessarily agree with that statement either. So,
There's got to be some level of
mm,
not being there
right,
to have a drive to rip a human apart,
right.
either before or after they have died.
I agree. I agree. But as far as doctors are concerned, no, there isn't. You
Oh,
know
yeah.
why? Because while some perpetrators suffer from severe psychiatric conditions,
Mhm.
many of them are not legally insane. So they could be sane.
Mhm.
They're just doing something
Mhm.
really, really bad. But that doesn't mean that they've been diagnosed with something. And I think that's where this falls, which I disagree. Just because they haven't been diagnosed doesn't mean it's not happening. There's a lot of you're assuming that all doctors are made equal. They're not. So
Right. So does that do a disservice, do you think,
to who?
to the public in a way of where
Mm,
I mean, kind of going back to the same thing, like pleading guilty by reason of insanity.
mm-hmm.
Usually, if that happens, and it happens in our case today,
Mm-hmm.
they will be mentally evaluated,
Right.
and the determination will basically say whether or not, they have a diagnosis or
Yeah.
not. But is that a disservice to people who really are and, find themselves in a certain circumstance where they aren't diagnosed with something? I don't
Right.
know.
Well, I don't know. I think it's a disservice to people that when it comes to violent crimes, that these disorders come out of the woodwork, like, oh, they're suffering from this, and that.
Mhm.
And so it's less likely
Mhm.
for people like us, normal people, to feel comfortable with such a diagnosis,
Mhm.
full knowing that, oh my God, this is only seen in horrible killers. Well, I think it's just not.
Right. And we've kind of talked about it before, I think recently in one of our cases where it might have been the vampire one, where he was in
Mhm.
court and he was acting, was that the right one? Where he was acting up in front of the jury. And then whenever the jury would go and talk, maybe it wasn't that one.
Shabusiness. She was.
So, yeah, acting up in front of
Mhm.
the jury, right, to show or kind of prove some sort of mental
Yeah.
instability or, give some momentum to a mental
Yeah.
illness in order to get off on
Mm-mm.
by reason of
Yeah.
insanity, I guess. I don't
Mm-mm.
know.
Well, some commit dismemberment out of necessity to hide evidence, like the
Mm,
mob, okay? While
mhm,
others do
mhm,
it due to a deep seated psychological disorder. The most common diagnosis that these offenders usually have, and these are people who dismember bodies,
mhm.
okay,
Yes.
they usually suffer from this plethora of disorders. And one of them
Okay.
is
Oh, yes.
ASPD, which is antisocial personality disorder.
Mhm,
That's a significant one in a
mhm,
lot of serial killers
mhm,
because that's the lack of empathy.
mhm,
Next one is schizophrenia,
mhm.
especially in untreated cases.
Yes.
Although it is rare, people who've been charged with dismemberment have suffered from schizophrenia
Mhm,
or some type of, I think, schizoaffective disorder, but we'll get into that. All right. So next one is psychopathy are more common in serial killers who engage in calculated sadistic dismemberment.
mhm,
Dissociative disorder, which is the DID,
mhm,
rarely associated, but in some cases, offenders claim altered
mhm,
states of consciousness. Like
mhm.
I didn't know what I was doing,
Yep, yep. I blacked out.
I
I
didn't
don't
remember
remember
anything.
anything. Yes, yeah.
And the last one is the IED, intermittent explosive disorder, sudden uncontrollable violent outbursts. So
Yeah.
here are some famous cases of dismemberment, Cat.
Yes.
Number one, Jeffrey Dahmer, the Milwaukee cannibal, murdered and dismembered 17 victims, often keeping their body parts as trophies in like tubs in his freezer.
Mhm,
Another famous one, Ed Gein,
mhm,
inspired the fictional characters of Norman Bates and Leatherface. Gein mutilated and dismembered his victims using their
mhm.
remains for furniture, clothing, like
Necropants.
his. I would have loved those.
What's the guy's name that was on? Sons of Anarchy, Charlie something. He's playing Ed Gein in the new Netflix Monster
Wait, the
series.
good-looking guy?
Yeah.
Hanson? No.
Hurston?
Yeah, something like that. I know exactly who he is.
Yeah.
He was the guy that was
Yeah.
supposed to play 50 Shades, and he didn't want to do that. He didn't feel motivated. He didn't want to be the sex symbol.
He decided to be Ed Gein.
All right. All right.
But so I've seen some pictures, and then we haven't really necessarily covered Ed Gein, but we've talked about him a lot, and
Yeah.
we know a lot about him.
We should do it.
But when you see some pictures of how he looks on the set compared to it, it's like, holy shit.
Transformed
Wow.
him. Yeah.
Yes. I mean, he still looks good. Ed Gein wasn't all that good looking, but you
No.
still see that Charlie Hurston. You
Okay.
still see it. You know what I'm
Alright.
saying? So that's going to be really good.
Oh,
I mean, just like Evan Peters did Jeffrey Dahmer.
Yes.
Fantastic.
Excellent.
Yes. Yeah.
All right. Looking forward for that. Okay. So,
Mm.
and the another one that I'm sure you've heard of this one is Izzy Sagawa.
Yes. Yes.
This is the man. I know this guy because he created a cookbook. Okay.
Yes.
This is a Japanese man who killed and dismembered a woman in France, later released due to insanity laws. He made a cookbook, and does he not own like a restaurant or something? Something crazy in Japan.
Yeah, yeah. I want to say when he went back to Japan, he had like the celebrity status.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Crazy. Crazy. Okay. So let's do a final recap because this is going to be a pop quiz later, maybe in the next episode. All right.
Pop quiz hot shot.
All right. Antisocial personality disorder is the most associated with premeditated violence.
Okay. Okay.
Schizophrenia and bipolar disorder may contribute to homicide, but only in rare untreated cases. Intermittent explosive disorder, IED, is linked to impulsive acts of violence, but is often overlooked because this is one of the things that don't get diagnosed that frequently. Like they need to do more of this. Next one is dissociative identity disorder.
Multiple personality disorder.
Yes.
Yes.
This is rarely linked to murder, but however is often misrepresented. And the last one is dismemberment is often mostly associated with antisocial personality disorder and usually linked to calculated criminal acts rather than severe mental illnesses. So yeah, I think the one key element here is when you're dealing with cases that involve dismemberment, the perpetrator most likely will be suffering from antisocial personality disorder.
Okay.
So, bottom line, while mental illness can be a factor in some violent crimes, most people with mental disorders are not violent, and most violent offenders do not have a severe mental illness. Instead, personality disorders, substance abuse, and childhood trauma play a much larger role. Understanding the truth about mental illness and violence can help reduce stigma and ensure that those who need help get cared for properly. That is my intro to this monstrous or mental case.
Yes. It's going to be a little bit of both in Kat's opinion. And chatters, I want to know what you think. Is he a monster or is he just mental? Because a lot of it does come down to what he actually did and what he actually confessed to. So
When you said that, I was thinking Maybelline when you were like, is he monstrous or mental? Maybe it's Maybelline.
maybe it's Maybelline. Again, additional disclaimer, this story is very violent, it is very graphic, and if you need to skip, come back next week and we'll have another story for you. If you're down for the ride, buckle in, kitty cats, because here we go. Quote, "I've always wondered what murder felt like," end quote.
Boy.
Those were the words of 19-year-old Brian Cohee as he confessed to murdering, dismembering a 69-year-old Grand Junction, Colorado homeless man, Warren Barnes, in 2021. Our story today is horrifying. It is chilling. It is downright evil. It also has very graphic commentary from the actual interrogation itself and images from the crime scene. But what we want you to think about in this episode is, was Brian Cohee truly a monster who premeditated a murder just to know how it felt? Or was he a victim of mental illness, unable to comprehend the consequences of his actions? Chatters, prepare yourself, buckle in, grab a beverage. We got some wine. We're ready to rock. It's going to be a wild ride.
Oh boy.
On Monday, March 1st, 2021, police received a phone call after a mother discovering a horrifying secret in her son's closet. Even more terrifying is he was currently outside of the house while she made the call for help without him knowing. The dispatcher tries to get as much information as possible to make sense of this shocking call and give officers an idea of what they might be walking into. Despite the horrifying nature of the call, police could not have anticipated the twisted tale of violence that they were about to embark on, nor did they have any idea just how shocking the motive behind the inexplicable horror would be.
911 is John. What's the address emergency?
Hi, there is an emergency. I found something in my son's closet wrapped in a plastic bag.
Okay, what was it?
I think it's a human head.
It's a what?
I think it's a human head.
Why do you think it's that?
Because it looks like it's an ear.
Is it bloody or does it like anything like that?
Can you just come? Do I have to take a picture and send it to you?
What's the address?
Come?
Is your son there now?
He just pulled up. We wanted to make sure he was here before we called.
How old is he?
19. He's had a little bit of a fascination with the morbid, but he was channeling it, I thought, into becoming a crime scene investigator, but not so much.
Do you think he's going to be cooperative with us?
I don't know. I don't think he'll be violent. Just came back from his friend's house.
Does he have any weapons in his room or do you guys have any in the house?
I don't know. I think that he has a shotgun, but we can certainly remove it immediately before he gets in his room. He's out by the car now, so.
Is the bag still in the closet?
No, it's in my kitchen sink. And there's a secondary bag that I have not opened. It's currently covered with a towel.
And there's a second bag?
There's a second bag that I don't know what's in it. I didn't open it.
I'm sorry. Did he take the second bag out of the closet?
I took the second bag out of the closet and put it in the sink.
Where's Brian now?
He's still out front.
And you're in the backyard now?
I am, yes, because I don't want him to hear me.
Oh, wow. Okay. I have something. I just want to say one thing.
Yeah.
How, as a parent in your house, not know if your son owns a shotgun? How do you not know that? Like,
Yeah,
oof.
yeah,
Like,
that was
to
a little
me,
weird.
That's
Like,
to me.
I
Yeah,
think
that
he has a shotgun. Like, you would know, right?
you would
Yeah.
absolutely know. Like,
Yeah.
that's, I mean, a good parent would absolutely know where the firearms are. And if her son, 19,
Mhm.
had it in his bedroom, why would it be? Like, I don't, well, and it's not like a
I
little
mean,
pistol, it's a
it-
freaking shotgun.
It's odd, right?
Yeah.
But it's not really relevant to this story.
Okay.
I think the dispatcher was just trying to get an idea of if he did go into the house, like, are there any weapons in the house that we need to be aware of? Just because they don't want to be taken off by surprise, right? They were
Yes,
just really trying to get a good idea of, like, what are they walking into?
Yeah, they need to know if
Yeah.
if he's a threat, but
Exactly.
yeah, and he wants to be a crime investigator. That's interesting.
Yes. Now what's going to come up?
Oh boy. Okay.
So that was March 1st. One day prior was Sunday, February 28th, 2021. At 2 a.m., emergency services responded to the Blue Heron boat ramp and could hardly believe their eyes. After all, it's not every day that police find a car floating in the Colorado River. Trying to make sense of this, they spoke with Brian's mother. Brian was having a bad night. She said, quote, "He's an inexperienced driver. He put his car here on the angle and got out, looked around for a moment, and when he went to go back in, he wasn't able to because the angle of the car, like, it was being pulled back in. Like, he couldn't pull it back out."
Okay. Mom's got a lot of excuses for her son. Well, okay.
So the officer decided to get the story straight from Brian. Brian was still there when the officers responded. He was sitting in his parents' pickup in the passenger seat.
Mhm.
The father had told police that Brian called them about 20 minutes prior and said, quote, "Dad, I parked at the boat ramp and I messed up. I tried to get out of the car and it slid down," end quote. So the officers made sure, one, Brian was not hurt, like, because he was actually in the car when it slid down and to go into the
Wow.
river. And this
Wow.
is February in Colorado.
Yeah.
So they did that. They asked for his ID just to kind of confirm who he is. They asked what he was doing down there, and he said, quote, "Well, I felt like I needed to get out, and I figured, why not park here and just relax and think? And I parked on the boat ramp, and I thought it would be easy to get out, but when I tried to, ... end quote.
Mm.
So Brian explained where exactly he parked his car. He kind of showed him exactly where it was parked and how it slid down and got into the river. He backed up into the ramp, and when he got back in, he tried to put the car in drive and it didn't go up. Now, apparently, this is a pretty steep slope to go for
Yeah.
the boat ramp to go in.
Yeah.
It's a situation so unique and ridiculous that the officers, like, couldn't help but laugh.
Yeah.
Like, You're a teenager, okay, kid,
Right. Yeah.
kind of thing. And shrugged it off as just being like a teenager's mishap, an
Mm-hmm.
inexperienced driver. Like, okay.
Mm-hmm.
They had no idea at this time there was something more sinister afoot. Embarrassed about the situation, Brian's mother told police that they made him wait until he was 18 before getting his driver's license because they didn't want him to have any accidents. Well, he did.
Mm-hmm.
Mom contacted a towing company to retrieve the car, provided the description of its location, and apparently the tow truck driver they originally contacted didn't want to go out there, one, in the middle of the night, two, they didn't want to get wet because it was super cold,
Yeah.
didn't have the proper clothing to get into the water and get wet. So the officers then contacted a different towing company who were willing to go out in the middle of the night and risk the frigid waters.
Oof.
Terry and Brian Sr. Cohee. So Brian Cohee is named after his father. So there's going to be a little confusion, like Brian Sr. or Brian Jr. Brian
Okay.
Jr. is our suspect in this case.
Okay.
So Terry and Brian Sr. at that time, while they're waiting for the towing company to actually get out there, take Brian Jr. home, and then just the parents return to the boat ramp without their son about an hour later.
Mm-hmm.
The towing company makes some progress, but as the car kind of nears the shore, as they're like hooking it in and trying to kind of pull it out, the officers make a disconcerting discovery.
Oh boy.
And they decided to question the Cohees about the back bumper. The officer said, quote, "There's a lot of red on the back of that, dripping down a little under the license plate area right there." And he's kind of like pointing to it. A lot of red, and it kind of looks like blood, end quote.
Oh.
Well, they were concerned that Brian actually might have injured himself because he was in the car when it went down. Now, granted,
Right.
it went ass first down in the river, so that doesn't really explain anything. But they were concerned that he might have been harmed, and he might not have recognized it because of the adrenaline afterwards, like with everything
Okay.
going on, right?
Yeah.
So Terry, mom, called him because it was just the parents out there at that time and said, "Hey, are you okay? It looks like there's some blood on the back of the bumper." And he's like, "Really?" He denied having any injuries. Mom asked several times.
Mm-hmm.
And he said that he was fine. And then he asked mom, "Where is the blood on it?" She answered it was back on the bumper. But both she and the officer said they weren't sure that it was blood, but
Yeah.
it was something red.
Okay.
And he said, Brian said he wasn't sure what it was, what would have caused blood or whatever to be there.
Okay.
The officers did have concerns about like the mysterious red substance
Uh-huh.
that was on the bumper, but they decided to release the car back into the Cohee's custody. So it got towed out by the company and the parents were able to retrieve it.
Wow.
Then on Monday, March 1st, so that was Sunday, February 28th, Monday, March 1st, the next day, police find themselves once again at the Blue Heron boat ramp. A homeless man by the name of Warren Barnes was reported missing, and police talked to the woman who called the report in, saying that he was missing. Her name is Monique Lenati. She owned Monique's Bridal downtown. She said she saw and talked to Warren very frequently and would give him a chair to sit on to read his books. Warren had the nickname the Reading Man by some of the local store owners because of his interest in reading books. People knew and described him as gentle and quiet. Many local business owners knew him and would give him books, pastries, drinks.
Aw.
Like he would just kind of roam around, homeless
Yeah.
man downtown. They were just trying to help him out, right?
Yeah.
Have a seat, read your books, here's some coffee, here's a donut, that kind of
Mhm.
thing. While at the boat ramp, police tried to get some more information from Monique. She said the last time that she saw Warren was Saturday, February 27th at about 5 o'clock. And she told Warren, quote, "I'll see you tomorrow." And then he was like, okay, meaning he had planned to come back the following day, Sunday, February 28th, but he never did.
Yeah.
Monique was very steadfast in that Warren would not have a reason to be down at the boat ramp and confirmed to police that like his camp isn't set up, like he doesn't sleep down here. We know where he
Right.
sleeps. He doesn't sleep down here. So she said Warren worked at a place called People Ready. Someone found his wallet that morning at the boat ramp, called People Ready because they saw his employee ID in it. And everything in Warren's wallet seemed to have actually been in there. Nothing was stolen or anything like that.
Mhm.
But Monique was concerned because she forged a very special relationship with Warren over the years. And then once People Ready was contacted, they contacted actually Monique because of how close they were.
Mhm.
And they said, "Hey, have you seen Warren? Because he didn't show up for work today." Warren was never one to not show up in the 4 years that he had been working there. So Monique began to worry. Between him not showing up, his wallet being found, and it was found in an area that he wouldn't go. I mean, it kind of makes sense where she's like, what is going on?
Right.
Police did confirm with People Ready, and the representative said that Warren showed up every morning without fail. Sometimes he showed up before 6 a.m., which was before they actually opened, and they let him come in early, have some coffee. The manager said, quote, "He's the nicest guy ever. Rough looking, but he's the nicest guy," end quote. So, March 1st, at the boat ramp, Monique provided a picture of Warren and said that this was from about 2 years prior, so it had been around 2019. Officers asked her who found the wallet, and she said it was from someone who works for a life jacket program. Guess who owns that life jacket program?
Oh.
Brian Cohee Sr.
Oh, okay.
And he actually said that in some of the police body cam footage. He told officers that night that he's down there a lot because he does own a company that runs a life jacket program, when they were working on getting Brian's car out.
Right.
So it turns out it came from Brian Cohee Sr. He found it in the now recovered sedan that his son accidentally sank in the river. So he goes in to basically look in the car and say, like, is this salvageable? He kind of goes in and looks around. He finds this wallet. There's more on that coming.
Okay.
So Brian Sr. and Terry, dad and mom, are somewhat like suspicious now of their son. Like something weird is going on, especially like this wallet is found in his car.
Yeah.
There was something that looked like blood on his car. A man is missing.
Yeah. Yep.
But Terry, mom, is about to make a horrifying discovery in her son's closet. She had the presence of mind to actually keep her son, Brian Jr., from realizing what she had discovered so police could respond without alerting him.
Wow.
The Mesa County Sheriff's deputies arrive at the Cohee residence, intentionally leaving their sirens off, not to frighten Brian, because he's actually outside when they pull up, keep him calm, and they have their initial approach. The deputy's approach as Brian is in the driveway is very disarming. He gives a disarming greeting. Hey, man, how's it going? You guys, you doing okay? Now, while simultaneously, the officer's scanning the area for potential threats. So outside of the home is Brian, Brian's dad, Brian Sr., and Brian's brother, Andy. The deputy also wanted to make sure that Brian's hands, were visible. Obviously, that's a safety, that's a precaution. So the three of them are sitting outside, out front, as the police arrive.
Okay, so parents have some concerns of some stuff they may have found in your room?
Yeah, I believe so.
And what would it be?
A human head and hands.
Do you have anything on you that's gonna cut, poke, hurt, stick me anything without reaching for nothing? Don't reach for nothing.
My phone and my wallet, that's
okay.
it.
Well, I'm gonna have you face that way. Put your hands on top of your head for me real quick. I just wanna make sure you interlace your fingers for me real quick, all right?
Fuck, that he just came out of nowhere. He just came out of nowhere. He was like, "Oh yeah, I got human head and hands."
Human head and hands, yes. And in the video, like you can search it. It's on YouTube. Like in the video, he's like, and then he gets very matter of fact, a human head and hands.
Wow.
Yeah,
Oh,
and also Brian said that the victim was, quote, "that fella who went missing recently," end quote. The officer asked him how he ended up with him, and Brian said, quote, "I murdered him," end quote. So the officer asked, quote, "with what?" And Brian answered, quote, "a knife."
He's confessing to everything.
And it's all on camera. When the officer asked why he killed him, Brian simply said he wondered what murder felt like.
Wow.
Even the most experienced officer would never be accustomed to such a situation. But Brian's parents are really the ones who are at most shocked because they're like, my son has a human head and hands in his closet. He's out here and he's telling us that he murdered somebody. So they are literally absorbing this grim reality of what their son did.
Yeah.
After Brian, he's searched, he's cleared. The deputy says, "Hey, Brian, go ahead and sit in the officer's car." So Brian's escorted to the car and he's sitting down there. And then the officer is escorted by Brian Sr. into the house. And just listen to this next clip. It's going to be devastating because you can audibly hear mom sobbing, just breaking down.
I'm gonna have you walk over here. You're gonna sit in the back of my partner's patrol car for a minute, okay? Not yet. Okay. Just sit back there and hang out for me, okay? Can you walk me inside, please?
Let's walk you all through this, what happened in the beginning.
Okay.
Let me do it. You go inside.
Well, let's stay out here with me for a minute.
Sit down. Come on, sit down, baby.
Can I go in there and verify here first?
Oh, yeah, please.
Let me
We
go
haven't
through
seen
that.
it. Yeah, we haven't looked at it.
It's under the towel in the sink.
Okay.
Yeah, Andy, Andy, stay with your mother. Give her a...
Hey, just make sure that guy goes in the car first.
I can stay here. You can go in the sink, right?
Well, yeah,
Sink
okay.
right there. No, you can anything.
Yeah.
House is empty.
Okay.
We just had a bag feeling about what happened this weekend.
Okay.
And she said there's a bag in this closet, and she opened it up. And she called me and said, get over here right now. I covered it with a towel.
Okay.
I didn't want him to see it because we didn't want him to run. I don't want to look at it.
Yeah.
Wow, I feel terrible for that mom. That cry told 1,000 words. Devastating.
Yeah. And at the end of the audio, you can hear the officer confirming the parents' suspicions. Like you can hear the bag rumbling and he goes, yeah. And in fact, was a human head inside of a bag placed in the kitchen sink. As Brian is placed in the car, he makes a comment to the escorting officer and he said, Grand Junction's been quite violent lately. Now, the female officer doesn't respond, but obviously she's recording all of this on her body cam.
Yeah.
Brian is told that then, after they confirm what was in the kitchen sink, right, that they're going to take him to the sheriff's office. His family is also going to be taken to the sheriff's office. On their way to the department, Brian makes another chilling remark. It was under this bridge as they drive by. That is the bridge that is in our video behind us.
What? You're giving me chills. Oh my God.
Again, the female officer is driving. She does not respond. And honestly, that's the best thing that they can do because everything is being audibly captured.
Yeah.
He just has this need to like speak and say something.
Yeah.
They get to the sheriff's office. Brian's escorted to an interrogation room. But what officers want to do is they want to talk to his parents first, find out what happened, take us through everything. Terry is interviewed first, the mom, and through her very tearful sobs, she provides information about the incident at the boat ramp the day before. She explained that with the battery getting wet in the car was inoperable. So Brian Sr. was cleaning out the car because he was trying to take it to see if anything could be salvaged from it. Dad then found a wallet and he called her. She also said that the officers thought that there was blood on the car in the bumper that was being pulled out of the river. This was the same car that the wallet was found in. She said Brian Jr., the son, the suspect, had a procedure that he had done on his armpit. He had like an abscess or something that was done on his armpit a few days prior. And Mom was like, maybe he didn't recognize that wound opened and his adrenaline was pumping and everything. He didn't realize it. So is that possible that maybe the blood is from his wound?
Yeah.
So she also told the officers that Brian took a special effects class in the previous summer, which involved fake blood. She said Brian told her that it could have been one of those fake blood containers that had opened in the trunk. And at this time, Mom and Dad, they thought it made sense.
Well, if it's there,
Right.
yeah, it kind of does if it's in the trunk.
I mean, and you're
Could
wanting
happen.
to believe you're wanting to believe your child, right?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So Terry then explained that she was in Brian's room cleaning and she was putting some things away. He had a Rubbermaid container that was in his closet and she started going through it and she's like, what is this? Like, what is this mess? Like, what has he got going on here? Like moms do.
Yeah.
And she saw a plastic bag with a white plastic trash bag. Wondering what in the world Brian had in there, she picked it up. She said it was heavy. She held it in her hands. She noticed maggots were covering something.
Oh my God.
She thought that she had better take it to the sink in the kitchen, figure out what the hell this is. And she noticed that it was double bagged, so she opened up the first bag and she saw what she called old blood. She ripped open the second bag and saw a head. She explained this in the interview to the deputy, uncontrollably sobbing. Like you couldn't hardly understand her. Like, and rightfully so.
That must have been
I would be a fucking mess.
That would have been so traumatic for her.
Yes.
That's
yeah.
I mean, just seeing a head in a bag alone, let alone your son. Oh my God.
Yes, in your son's closet in a Rubbermaid container.
Yeah.
Like,
wow.
well, she did gain her composure, and she said after this, she called her husband, and he said that he had just picked up Andy, the brother, from school, and he was on his way. Now, a really side note, it's not really important to the story. Mom and Dad either were divorced or separated. They were living in two different houses at this time. Doesn't really have a whole lot to do with it, but Brian goes back to Mom's house, I guess. And he picked Andy up from school, and he's taking him home. She said, you need to get here right away. And he said, okay, I'm on the way. I'll be there soon. She said that Brian was at a friend's house and her name is Kylan Like. What a name. Kylan Like.
Mhm.
And of course, she was somebody, once mom said this, who police wanted to talk to. So Kylan's mother, her name is Heather Gale. She recalled when Brian was there and left her house because Brian got notified that he needed to get home. Brian peeled out of the driveway, leaving marks, and she told the officers that, like, I actually took pictures of it because he just, like, got in the car and he just, like, sped out and, like, left these tire marks in her front yard.
Wow.
So what Brian did is he told Heather that his brother needed to get the car back for a driving lesson because Andy had his learner's permit. That's the ruse that the parents used to get Brian back to the house without him being suspicious. So Kylan Like was also interviewed, and Kylan said that Brian had a very morbid provocativeness about his personality.
Okay.
He was edgy. He loved to get a reaction out of people, would say things out of the blue.
Okay.
He wanted people to have a double take with something that he said, whether it was a dark joke or a comment. She said he rarely made a joke that didn't have anything to do with death or violence.
Wow.
People either thought he was hilarious or they actually loathed him. Like they didn't want anything to do with it. It was like one or the other.
Yeah.
She did say at one point, she's like, and I was one of those people that liked him. He talked also a lot about killing someone, but she never thought he would actually do it. And what's also scary is that Terry ran a daycare out of her home. She actually had a few kids at the house there when she made the discovery and had to scramble to get parents to come pick up their children. And she was like, we had an emergency. Your children are safe. Nobody's hurt, but there's an emergency. I need you to come get your kids right away.
That's
Can you imagine?
terrifying. Yeah.
I saw something else that said that like some of the parents were like, I hope everything's okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for calling us, that kind of thing. But
Nobody's
wouldn't have-
expecting this.
no.
Wow.
So, in the interview, Terry was asked about Brian's mental state, and she said that he was diagnosed with ADHD at the age of 5. He was placed on medication. When Brian was in middle school, he started exhibiting antisocial behavior. He would say things to get the other kids riled up, thinking that he was funny. And then when he entered high school, he got into a lot of trouble for behavioral issues. Terry and Brian Sr., Dad, had a meeting with the school when Brian was in the 11th grade where they were told by the other kids that they didn't feel safe around him. They took him for more testing, had him seen by a doctor. The doctors confirmed, yes, he had ADHD. They also said that he was autistic. They recommended Brian actually get further testing because of a potential psychosis. Unfortunately, no one in town was able to see him, and Mom was like, well, he's doing okay. He's graduated high school. He's working at Safeway part-time. To the best of her knowledge, he took all his medication. He was on the ADHD medication as well as an antidepressant, and she said that she would ask him, hey, did you take your medication? He said, yes, he did. And occasionally she would go back and check the pill bottles to make sure that, they were going down.
Right.
So on that day, Dad, Brian Sr., got to the house before Brian did. And he was the one that placed the towel over, quote, that poor man's head, end quote.
So the head was in the sink when the cops got there?
Yes, the head
Okay.
was in a sink, double bagged.
Right.
It had like a grocery bag, and then that was in a trash bag, like a kitchen trash bag. So as soon as Brian, the son, pulled up after Dad got there, that's when she called 911 because she wanted to make sure that Brian was home.
Smart lady.
Yeah. Now that's Mom's interview. Dad's interview, he said that he found what he described as a very large kitchen knife in the glove box of the car when he went to go salvage it and find things. And then he said the glove box was full of water. He said glove box, but it was actually, the pictures show that it was like the center console, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So it wasn't necessarily the glove box. He went around to the passenger door and found a wallet, and he thought it was Brian's at first. But when he opened it, he was like, who is this guy? Like, this is not my son. So he told police that he called People Ready and asked if they knew who's this identification that he found. And they said, yes, we know who that is. He didn't show up for work today. He told the People Ready, let the man know whenever you see him, I have his wallet at my house, and I'll come give it to him. So Dad then called his son to say, hey, why do you have this guy's wallet in your car? I found this, what is going on? Brian said he found it at the boat ramp when he was down there walking around. And then Dad said, quote, "He was so sincere. I want to believe him. He's my son."
Yeah.
End quote.
Wow.
So he said he continued to question his son about the wallet and why he didn't tell his parents that he found this wallet. And Brian said that he was so caught up with totaling his car and trying to get it out of the river that he didn't think about it.
Yeah.
And then Dad said, "Okay, so who is this Warren whatever guy?" And then Brian answered, "Dad, I swear to you from the bottom of only know one Warren. He's my school friend. It's not him." End quote.
Okay.
So Dad then told the officer that there was a smear of blood that they found on the back of the bumper of his car and knew it didn't come from a cut. Like there was more blood. And there's some pictures on the Patreon that's going to kind of show the blood smear that's on the bumper. He said, quote, "I asked him outright, 'Brian, you telling me the truth? I knew, but I didn't want to believe it.'" End quote.
Wow. Wow.
He said when Brian pulled up at the house, he thought Brian could tell something was up. And he told his dad, quote, "Dad, you ever feel like the day's going to change?" End quote. Dad was like, "Yeah, and he left his responses, kind of vague and didn't really address it. He stayed outside with Brian and Andy, the brother, while Mom was on the phone with 911. Investigators also asked Dad about Brian's mental state. Dad said about 3 years prior, he was going to counseling and that Brian had told him he was lonely and he had some strange thoughts about murder. Brian would make jokes about nooses, and his parents knew he had a really dark sense of humor. He said they noticed weird things about him and they began to realize Brian was probably sick. Now, for instance, Brian would look at his dad, and the dad said this during the interview. He said he would look at me sometimes with just this cold, dark look on his face and not say anything, just like stare at him.
Yeah. Wow.
Eerie.
Yeah.
Now, as investigators continued talking to the parents, other investigators, Pete Berg and Lisa Norcross, went in to interview Brian. Over the next 2 hours, they heard Brian's shocking story of the blood-curdling evil. Before the interview was over, they learned the harrowing truth about Brian's ill-fated visit to the boat ramp. They learned all about that.
Oh, boy.
During the interview, Brian was cooperative. He was pleasant, just as he was when the officers responded to the house. However, his nonverbals showed a little bit of a different story. He displayed nervous shaking and had an insatiable thirst, like he was drinking a lot of water.
Okay.
Maybe not as calm as he wanted them to think he was.
Mm-hmm.
Was he anxious about his fate? Or was he excited for his moment in the spotlight?
Mm-hmm.
One thing to keep in mind is Brian was diagnosed with ADHD and autism. So when his leg is shaking in the interviews, and you can see this because all the interviews, his interrogation is recorded, it's a normal stimulating behavior that people with these diagnoses have.
Yeah.
So the officers go in, read Brian his Miranda rights. He agrees to speak with them. Part of their questioning in the beginning was really just to put Brian at ease, rapport building, trying to keep him calm. And they ask questions about school, work, and in doing so, they establish if he is capable of carrying on a conversation, which is, of course, his mental stability, right?
Mm-hmm.
You ask certain questions that seem benign, but are really done intentionally.
Mm-hmm.
And basically eliminating to a jury whether or not he knew right from wrong. They started to get into more details, and Investigator Berg asked, quote, "How did you get here?" End quote. Brian said, quote, "I murdered someone." End quote.
Oh, my God.
But Investigator Berg meant, how did you physically get to the sheriff's office? Not
my
that.
God.
But Brian was just like, "I murdered someone."
Yeah. Wow.
And it seemed that Brian was kind of bragging a little bit.
Mm.
And then all too willingly, he told the police investigators how he carried out the deadly attack on a homeless man.
Oh, my God.
He was asked to start at the beginning and try to recall as many details as he could. And Brian said, quote, "I mean, I'm already going to jail for 15 years probably. I mean, it's murder, 20 probably, so I figured, why fight it?" End quote.
Wow.
That was his justification for cooperating.
Yeah, it was the night of February 27th. It was a full moon, and I figured I can see so well, why not drive out? I am in a bad state of mind at that time. I have major depressive disorder, so I am not thinking something positively. Okay. And I'm cruising around for an hour and a half. So I fill up on gas halfway through, and eventually driving underneath the bridge near the sheriff's office.
So we were at the bridge.
Yes, I was at the bridge. I was cruising. So, yeah, there was a road underneath, right? out under the overpass. And I was driving along, and I see a shape here on the railway track. So I'm like, oh, interesting. So I go up, and as I'm looking, I see a large thing wrapped in a canvas.
Okay.
And I'm like, that's a homeless person. So I grab my knife, I put on 3 layers of gloves, because plastic gloves can betray their users because they're so thin, those vinyl gloves, by printing your fingerprints through. So I put on 2, 3 on one hand. I took the knife, I pulled back the canvas, and I stabbed his neck.
Okay.
He was panicking at first in his old man voice. He was in his 50s. I know why I call him old man. He was saying, "What are you doing? What are you doing? Why? Ah!" And I just kept on stabbing his neck. Is it okay if I do a demonstration?
Oh, yeah.
This is him. I was straddled on top of him like this.
Okay.
And he couldn't fight back. It was actually surprisingly easy. I was barely breaking a sweat. I thought, oh, this guy, he's going to be tough. But no, it was actually surprisingly easy. And during the time, I was growling and making animalistic noises.
He's demonstrating. He's like, can I demonstrate what I did to this poor man?
He actually, like I said, you can look at the YouTube videos. He gets down and he's like, "Can I demonstrate?" And he gets down on his knees and he's showing how he stabbed him. And he's just like this. This is how I did it.
And he's growling.
And he growled at him. He was like, "Arr, arr."
Wow.
So a few things here. Brian is very matter of fact.
Yeah.
He drew a picture where he was. And you could see him like, yeah, I was under this bridge. So behind in the video, you can actually see where he's drawing the bridge. And he's saying like, this is where I was. This is where he was. This is where I saw him. Where he saw him under the bridge. And then he even demonstrated how he was stabbing him. Then there's a smile in the video. As he is telling what is happening, he is reliving the murder, almost relishing in the memory.
Oh my God.
The whole ordeal lasted about a minute and a half.
Okay.
And when I was finished stabbing him, he took out his last breath, a grunt, and his head was halfway cut off in stabs. All the while, no, actually, after I killed him, I just couldn't stop saying, stinky, dirty, stinky. I wasn't smelling anything, but...
Wow. Yeah, I'm getting chills.
Yeah, Brian is like, stinky.
Wow.
That stinky boy. Well, Brian, coincidentally, had on one of his social media accounts, he identified himself as, quote, that stinky boy underneath his registered email. And there's a picture on the Patreon of it that shows him holding a piece of paper that says, that stinky boy.
Wow.
So when he was asked why he was saying that, Brian didn't know, but he remembered doing it. He said, quote, I suppose it was just me speaking out my mind at that moment, pouring out my mind, end quote. So Investigator Berg asked Brian if he was worried about someone seeing him as he was doing this because he was so close to the road. Being 11 o'clock at night, Brian said there wasn't very many people driving by, and he also was behind a pillar.
Mm-hmm.
So, like the pillar that's behind you, so he was kind of behind a pillar. So no one really wouldn't have been able to see that well unless they were like right there. He said he was worried that someone might stop, but it was really quite dark under the bridge.
Yeah, no one's gonna stop under a bridge.
Yeah.
That's scary. Alone.
There's a couple other comments about this. The investigator asked Brian what someone would have seen if they did stop and see him there. And Brian answered, quote, me holding a bloody 12-inch knife, wearing gloves, and wearing a mask to conceal my identity, end quote. Now, all the while, he's still laughing and smiling as he's talking about this. He said no one stopped because it proves the bystander effect.
Mm-hmm.
Bystander effect is the idea that more people watching a crime, the less likely anyone is going to do anything about it, because usually they're afraid to be judged by what the rest of the crowd is thinking and don't want to be the one to step in first.
Yes.
So Brian actually says that proves the bystander effect. Now, with people being social creatures, they tend to do whatever the rest of the crowd does, and it's very rare that a person kind of goes against it. That's just,
there's
statistically speaking.
There's a couple of horrible, heinous crimes dealing with the bystander effect when in broad daylight
Kitty
stuff.
Genovese.
Oh yeah,
We
that's
talked
right.
about the Kitty Genovese. That's kind of where this actually originated from, because people heard her screaming
Yeah.
and they didn't do anything.
Right. And this is 2021, so this is in the midst of COVID. So everybody had a mask on. And honestly,
Well, it wasn't that kind of
the-
mask. We'll get to it.
oh, okay. Different mask.
And then after that, I stripped his clothes. I cut open his belly to see his guts. They're really pink. Sorry, that was morbid.
Wow. He's like, he giggled.
They're really pink.
That's sinister.
With this level of detail,
That's-
along with his casual commentary and jokes, investigators felt that Brian was probably being truthful about what he actually did.
Yeah.
And in this next clip, Brian continued to provide gory details about how he dismembered Warren. It is graphic.
Okay.
So, extra warning. Fast forward about 30 seconds if you don't want to hear it.
Destroyed his eyes by stabbing them.
Okay.
And then I cut off his hands. I put those in plastic Ziploc bags. And then I cut off his right arm at this joint and at this joint. And then at this arm, I tried cutting it here, and then I tried cutting it here. But what happened was I accidentally broke his bone. This one, it was poking out. And so I left that one here, partially cut, dismembered here, bone sticking out. And then I left his body there. And then I took the head, put it in a leftover pizza box from the dinner a few nights ago. And then I took the hands, put them in the back, drove home, hid the hands and head in my room, cleaned the knife, threw away the garbage with the blood on it, and then put the blood stained, wasn't stained, it had splatters on it. I put it in the dish, in the washing machine.
What did you put in there?
I put the outfit I murdered him in the washing.
You were wearing, or?
Yeah, I was wearing.
Okay.
In a washing machine, put it on high speed so it would effectively remove the blood. Washed it twice.
Holy crap, Kat. That is, wow.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what to say. Like, I'm speechless.
I know. Armed with this information, no pun intended, police went to the area where Brian described that he stabbed, dismembered, and threw Warren's body parts, because he said he took the arm and he threw it this way, he took the other arm and threw it this way.
Right.
Now, what he was saying is, when he was saying the joints, he basically was like at the elbow is where he cut it off, and then at the shoulder on the right hand. And then when he went to do the left side, he did the elbow, but then he actually broke like the upper arm, and it was protruding, so he didn't cut the upper arm of the right side off.
Oh my God. I'm speechless. And that says something, because
I know.
I'm never at a loss of words.
I told you.
Wow.
Well, on the body cam, you can actually hear the police when they're at the scene, audibly shocked. Everything that Brian was saying was there. On the body cam, you hear him say, "There's an arm, there's a leg," or it could be an upper arm. And you also hear some of the officers laughing, but it's that nervous laugh, that like I'm uncomfortable laugh, not laughing at the situation. And unfortunately, that was also shown in court. But
wow.
you know, it's that weird, like, oh my God, that's actually true. No shit.
Yeah.
They actually say on the video, no shit, that's an arm?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. So police continue to ask Brian about what he did with the hands and the head.
Oh my God, you're blowing my mind. Okay. All right. Oh my God. They're finding him in pieces. This poor guy.
Behind us.
Oh my Lord.
Behind us.
I'm sitting in the middle of a crime scene. Okay. This is going to give me nightmares. This entire freaking episode.
Oh, listen to this. Yeah. This is very important, this part.
You took, was it the head and the hands? And when did you put them in?
Well, there's a 3 rule for bodies. I like to call it the 3 rule.
Okay, tell me about that.
3 days, the body starts to stink. No, 3 hours, rigor mortis sets in, body stiffens. 3 days, the body starts to stink because of decomposition. 3 weeks, the body is starting to seriously decompose.
Right.
3 months, the body is unrecognizable. 3 years, it turns into a skeleton.
And may I ask how you know that?
I've always had a fascination with forensics and with anatomy and physiology. That's something I made up. So that's something I don't want to sound like I'm inventing something. But that's why I coined the 3 rule.
You kind of remember it that way.
Yeah.
That's your way of remembering.
Is it accurate?
Well, somewhat. So, yeah, so what did you have the head and the hand at your house?
The head I put, because it was starting to stink, I was planning on throwing the head and hands away. Not in the trash bag, not in the kitchen trash. But they were both in trash bags. The head was in a trash bag. I tied up the trash bag. Hands, I put in a trash bag as well. They were in Ziploc bags. And I was planning, do they sell empty paint buckets? Mm-hmm. I was planning to buy an empty paint bucket, put the head in it, seal it, and then I was going to throw it off in some dish.
Okay.
The hands I would throw in a different spot, wherever.
I'm sorry, I just want to make sure I have it right. The head is inside of a trash bag.
It was.
Well, where is it now?
In the kitchen sink. My parents searched through my room and they found the head and hands.
Okay, and so are the head and the hands in the kitchen sink now?
Last time I checked.
Okay, so they're in the kitchen sink now because your parents put them there.
But they were in my closet.
Oh, yeah, that's...
Yeah, so...
I don't know what to say. Like, I don't know what to say here because he's so like, articulate in how he's coming across.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he's so, as a matter of fact...
Yeah.
All right, the three rule?
The 3 rule.
Okay.
Yes.
We've had a podcast for 4 years. I've never heard of this 3 rule. I just learned of it.
He made it up.
But
he coined the term, the 3 rule. In 3 hours,
right,
you have rigor mortis. Within 3 days, the body starts to stink.
Yeah.
Within 3 weeks, the body starts to decompose. 3 months, severe decomposition. 3 years, nothing but skeleton. That is his rule that he came up with in studying forensics.
That's crazy. That's insane.
So, investigator Norcross stroked Brian's ego a little bit intentionally, making him feel like she's memorized by the fact that he came up with this 3 rule. And in return, Brian felt that he earned their approval. Like, hey, I did something good. Right. So it's a game. It's a chess match, right?
Right.
And again, it's a way to keep Brian calm, disarming, keep him talking. At another point during the confession, Brian made the comment that he hoped he was cooperating well enough. Like, I hope I'm cooperating well enough. And Investigator Berg says, yes, you're doing great. Keep him talking.
Yeah.
So police continue to try and get more details from Brian about what happened. This is also graphic. So if you need to, fast forward about a minute.
White, like a kitchen one, or what? Like
a kitchen
one. White kitchen?
That you put in a trash can.
Yeah. And then what about the hands? They were inside Ziplocs, you said.
Both in a different trash bag.
Okay, the white kitchen trash bag.
Yes.
But now they're in the kitchen sink.
Yes.
And you talked about cutting, I used to be a meat cutter. I know it's not easy, just cut off hands.
Oh, yeah. It was with the knife. I was just...
So did you practice on anything else?
No.
Or how did you know how to do it?
No, I just went along as a process. The bones, I just pressed the blade down and went... Sever them at the ligaments.
Okay. And how hard was it to do that? To get them actually?
Not particularly hard. I was just more frustrated that I broke this bone.
So if you hadn't got frustrated, what was your... I mean, it sounds like what you did, we know. Did you have a different plan? Why
the original... Because I always wanted to know what it felt like to cut up someone.
Okay.
So, just...
So why did you stop? Why did you stop?
Because the arms were just... That's it. And that's all I wanted to know was like cutting off a limb. And I'm just like, okay.
Holy crap. He made the freaking sound effect of a bone breaking.
He said, yes. So the next thing Brian talked about were the steps that he took to avoid getting caught. And this is important because it spoke to his state of mind. And again, to say whether or not he knew what he was doing was right or wrong.
Yeah.
He tells investigators he did not study forensics in school, but he was very interested in it.
Oh, boy.
College study or school study. It's like a passing interest.
I understand. But what were you worried about, like leaving evidence behind? Or
caught? Totally.
So tell me about that and what you did then.
Well, I was figuring the police don't, this is not to be taken offense, but police, they don't seem to care as much about high-risk individuals, homeless people, prostitutes, etc. So I was deliberately looking for someone who lived that type of life.
Okay.
And I found a homeless person. And the original goal was just even there. But I was worried about the fibers on the outfit I was wearing that would be on his clothes and stuff. So I deliberately messed up the clothes.
Wow, he thought of everything. He thought of everything. That's disturbing.
So investigators went on and asked Brian how long he had been planning to kill someone or looking for someone before he found Warren. He said a year, well, maybe like 6 months. During the investigation, police retrieved Brian's computer, and his search history was quite telling. As recent as 15 days before the murder, Brian was Googling things like how to cope with murderous thoughts, homicidal ideation, and homicidal thoughts every day. He also told police he went on night drives about once every 2 weeks, looking at places where homeless people lived. He then made a reference to Ed Kemper. This is also graphic, so skip ahead, chatters about 30 seconds if you need to.
In the past?
Not at all.
Not at all. You just drive around and
Yeah, look, just try and find
is
something.
anybody interesting and
No.
in your mind thought of a plan?
Well, occasionally when you see girls walking down the street, I take a glance at them because it really is like Ed Kemper, where half of me says, well, I'm quite inept with women. I'm being honest, I'm no Casanova. But half of me says, I want to take that girl home and make her feel nice. And the other half of me, it's just like what Ed said, is I want to see what her head looks like on a stick.
My God. Jesus.
Yeah. So if you haven't realized it yet, Brian's details, his smiles, his joking, his laughing, raised questions about his psychological mindset. Additional internet search histories were related to mental health disorders, including schizoid and paranoid personality disorder and avoidant personality. He also conducted searches like, how do people react to a home invasion? How do people react to being held at knife point? And how deadly is a neck stab wound?
Wow.
The investigators asked Brian about mental battles that he might have had, and Brian listed out his claimed psychological history. Like, this is what he said he had been diagnosed with: high-functioning Asperger's, which is high-functioning autism, ADHD, major depressive disorder, and he also said schizo something. Now, Brian explained it could be schizophrenia, schizoaffective, schizotypal, schizo disorder, but he was actually never diagnosed with it. Just they thought that he might have had schizo something. Brian denied having hallucinations, but maybe delusions. He explained years prior he was obsessed with people staring at him, and he felt that people were watching him from every window. The birds were staring at him. The investigators are asking questions like, so you have someone talking to you or another personality in your body? And he declined. He said no. But they're asking this to determine his level, his mental awareness, and if he committed the crime under some sort of kind of hallucination, or if he pled guilty by reason of insanity, what he would say.
Yeah.
But Brian denied outright hearing any voices in his head.
Okay.
His search history helped to show exactly what he was thinking up to a day before his murder, and again the day of the murder. Brian looked at several Wikipedia articles for notorious killers to include James Dale Ritchie, Joseph Christopher, and Andrea Yates.
Wow.
Then the police started going over the information, and Brian was confirming things like where Warren's belongings were, that his head and hands were in the house, that the knife he used and Warren's wallet were found in his car. Investigator Berg then asked Brian about why he wore specific clothing that night.
Oh. Okay.
Any reason you were wearing dark blue one-piece jumpers?
You know the movie Halloween, Michael Myers? He wears one of those, and for Halloween last year, I bought that as a costume to find the mask in my room.
Okay.
And I just associated that article of clothing with violence. That's why I was wearing it
That night.
Yes.
Oh my God. Not to just pile on the creep factor, but he's also dressing as Michael Myers?
Yes.
What the fuck?
And he said the year before on Halloween, he went as Michael Myers, and he wore his Michael Myers one-piece blue jumpsuit and the Michael Myers mask that night.
He What?
Yes.
That's the mask he was wearing?
That's the mask. It wasn't COVID mask. It wasn't the N35 or the medical masks. Nope. It was the Michael Myers mask. Yeah.
This is a nightmare.
I
I
know.
don't know. I don't know what to say to this. Like, I don't like. Wow. Okay.
So not only is this a chilling revelation of information,
What to do with that information? I'm so freaked out right now. Okay.
investigators had to take it a step further and ask him if he had ever done this before, right?
Yeah.
Because you want to know, like, do you have a history of this?
What do you think about Freddy Krueger?
Yeah. Brian declined. He said, okay, you've never killed anybody before, but what about animals?
Yeah.
He said yes.
Mhm.
Around Halloween 2018, there was a stray black cat that was around their house. He caught it, put it in a sleeping bag, beat it, strangled it, snapped its neck, and then decapitated it. He hid the cat's body in a shoebox and then in a wine cork box and kept it for 3 days, quote, and then it started to stink, his 3-day rule. He disposed of it in the trash and he said, quote, got away with it.
Wow.
Brian said then when he killed the cat, he thought about killing people. When he was actually killing the cat, he was thinking about killing people, but he never really wanted to act on it until about a year prior to this incident. Those thoughts came to him when he was still in high school. And part of the video is redacted, his interrogation, but Brian said, quote, call me weird, but I think everyone has had thoughts of shooting up their school. I suppose I just don't really like people, end quote.
Oh my
No!
God. This kid.
People don't think about shooting up their school?
This is getting worse and worse. Like, this is just getting worse and worse. This is terrible. This is a nightmare. This is a total freaking nightmare. The cops must have been like, are you kidding me? Like,
well, and the thing is like being part of those types of interrogations, you can't react. Inside, you're going, what the fuck?
Yeah.
But on the outside, you have to be like, okay, yeah, I get it. Okay, tell me more. Oh my! But these investigators did a fantastic job during this interrogation just to get him stroke his ego, get him talking, like let him just spell it all out. So Brian's journalism teacher was interviewed, and she said that Brian wanted to read about bizarre things. Mostly things that they didn't have in their school's library. But he did check out a book about the son of Sam. And then in the following quarter, he read a book about the Columbine shootings.
Oh, God.
He had this weird obsession about Columbine. And maybe that's where the whole school shooting thing was coming to mind.
Oh, my God.
So Brian told detectives this was not the first time his parents found something unsettling in his room. Last year, this would have been 2020, they found a kill kit. He had hammers, shovels, knives, large zip ties, duct tape, and saws. And Brian said, quote, it was meant for hurting people. They found it, though, and I had to convince them it was for other things, end quote. Oh, so mom and dad gave him an ultimatum and said, throw it away or we're going to call the police. So he threw it away. When the investigators asked Brian what he intended to do with this kill kit, he said he was going to find a prostitute, have them go with him, tie him up, and torture them. Brian explained he decided not to go with that plan because it would have been too risky. He was caught once with the kill kit, and his parents forgave him. But if he was caught again, they definitely would have called police. So that's why he decided to use a different plan.
Wow.
Now, they then try to figure out more about what happened at the Blue Heron boat ramp. And Brian said after he killed Warren Barnes, he went home to try to sleep, but he couldn't.
I was worried that because there was a hole in my gloves right here, I was worried that they would be able to obtain a partial print. So I figured, why not go all the way? I drove back in a different outfit, picked up his body, surprisingly heavy, put it in my trunk, and drove to the Blue Heron drop-off station. I parked, so it's like this, right? So let's say this is ground. The ramp is quite steep, and you need to have four-wheel drive to pull out of it.
Okay.
And my car didn't. So I pulled in. I thought that I could drive out because I put it in reverse, A, so that it's easier to pull the body out, and B, because the back tires would provide propulsion to push up.
Right.
And I open the trunk, I take his body out, I put it in the water, and because I don't want fingerprints on a body, so I just try moving it with my shoes. That works successfully. He goes out some part in the river and floats off.
Okay.
God knows where he is now. Maybe a he. He's dead.
Still a he.
Okay, yeah. God knows where he is now. I think my guess was that it would be discovered this morning or next morning, so keep an eye out for any river-related activity.
Okay.
To inevitably drive out.
Yeah.
My car didn't come out.
From Blue Heron.
Yeah, from Blue Heron.
Yeah.
My car was stuck. I tried putting it full throttle.
Yeah.
That doesn't work. My car doesn't have four-wheel drive. Stupid me.
Okay.
And so then I tried putting it in low gear. I'm trying everything with this.
Right.
And it still doesn't come out. And then it slides into the river.
Oh.
My car slides into the river, me inside. And so I'm there in a car quickly being flooded with water.
Okay.
It is the middle of February.
It's cold.
At night.
Yeah.
In the river that's almost freezing.
Yes.
I'm drenched. I almost died. So I'm able to climb out. I don't see the body, so I assume it's traveled a bit.
Okay.
I come up, and I'm sitting there. I need to act fast or else I'll die of hypothermia. I'm panicking a bit at this point. I'm going to be like, this is what I'm going to be remembered for, dying of hypothermia and a botched attempt at hiding a body. And I'm just like...
Okay. First of all, kudos to the investigator questioning him because she really did do a good job with not being triggered with what he was saying and just kind of like placating him.
Yeah.
But the simple fact that he's sitting there going, and I was scared. I was afraid of dying while I'm hiding a body. Wow. That's a whole new level of fucked up.
I know. But again, Brian is laughing. He's in good spirits, which he could have passed for an amusing anecdote if it were not for the horrifying details behind the truth of what he was describing.
Oh my God.
Brian then said when the officer asked about the potential blood on the bumper, he realized he forgot to wipe it off. He started panicking, but realized the cops probably would want to get into the trunk. Relieved, he said, quote, "Fools, there's nothing in the trunk," end quote. He's like, I let the body out.
Wow.
So after Brian was taken in for questioning, police did a more thorough search on his car. They noticed more blood on the driver and passenger side door handles and one of the multi-layer gloves that was in the car, because he said he had 3 gloves in one hand, 2 on the other. And the reason why he went back is because he had a rip in one of the gloves, and he thought that a little pinhole that the police would be able to get a fingerprint.
Wow.
With Brian's attempt to dispose of the body, again, more clear signs that Brian knew right from wrong. The day after the murder, Brian did a search of his phone, and he searched, quote, how to wipe data from an Android phone, and does a river wash away any evidence? And then, how to dispose of organic refuse. Additional interviews with teachers and classmates indicate a history of a fascination with serial killers. He had a journal where he kept his troubling entries, detailing his fixation, and devised his own cryptic code or alphabet. Think Zodiac Killer.
Oh,
He had that in his journal.
that's terrifying.
He also had profiles. He had profiles of his favorite killers, which included how many people they killed, their modus operandi, and the type of killer they were, organized, unorganized. Psychological profiling of our favorite person, Jed. And not to mention, he outlined plans for taking lives. Step 1, invade a home. Step 2, kill adults. Step 3, kill children. Step 4, take valuables. Step 5, leave. Gear, .45 revolver, hunting knife, lighter, alcohol. So one last question investigators asked Brian. Did you enjoy it? He said, quote, I don't know, just neutral of the whole thing. I didn't enjoy it, but I didn't hate it. And if I go back to that night, I probably wouldn't have done it knowing what it felt like. Knowing how this will turn out, I wouldn't have done it, end quote. Brian's interrogation is over and seems quite satisfied with himself on how well he cooperated with detectives. He enjoyed every minute of the conversation and partially achieved out what he said to do, to see himself in the same league as the infamous killers like Ed Kemper.
Wow.
When Investigator Berg walked Brian into the booking department, Brian smiled and looked at him and said, quote, I feel like Hannibal Lecter right now.
Oh my
End quote.
God. Oh my Lord.
Brian was charged with murder in the first degree, tampering with a deceased human body, tampering with physical evidence in connection to a homicide. At his plea hearing, January 2022, Brian pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity, claiming that his diagnosis of mental health disorders and environmental stressors caused him to become insane when he saw Warren Barnes. 2 psychologists examined Brian for his insanity plea and concluded that he was not insane. Brian's defense attorneys called a witness during their trial who they hoped would persuade a jury that Brian Cohee was insane when he murdered 69-year-old Warren Barnes. Dr. Paul Sprague was hired to perform a sanity evaluation on Brian. Dr. Sprague said that while it might look like Brian planned the killing, he would call it an inference. This, despite court testimony indicating Brian carried 3 pairs of gloves to the killing in an attempt to conceal fingerprints, as well as deleting photos of the victim that he took on his cell phone in case somebody might see him. Dr. Sprague still claimed that Brian spent much of his time researching murder and serial killers, that it's more likely that Brian was indulging in his interest to the max rather than plotting a murder. Ultimately, jurors found him guilty. In February 2023, 2 years after the murder of Warren Barnes, Brian Cohee Jr. was found guilty of 1 count of first-degree murder, 2 counts of tampering with a deceased human body, 1 count of tampering with evidence. He was sentenced to life in prison without parole and is currently serving his life sentence at Buena Vista Correctional Complex in Colorado Springs, Colorado. Meanwhile, a permanent metal art memorial was installed next to Monique's bridal downtown, carefully crafted to reflect Warren Barnes' favorite pastime, reading.
Oh.
And that is the story.
Oh my God. This is a hell of a birthday episode. Damn. All right. Okay. This is probably one of the worst cases you've done, and you did Ed Kemper.
I know.
The simple fact that this, I mean, I maybe because we have all the audio also, it brings you in.
I had to include the audio because it was so me retelling and quoting what you actually said.
I don't believe it until you hear it. You got to hear it to believe it.
And you have to hear it, and you have to hear the snicker in his voice and how he's laughing because he is that maniacal.
Wow.
He is that fucking twisted.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to know what murder felt like. I wanted to see what the inside of a body looked like. Oh, it was pink, by the way.
Oh my God.
Ridiculous. Just like, this was absolutely unfucking believable. And I feel for his parents.
Yeah.
I really do. Like, I think we talked about before, like, I cannot imagine if my kids, one of them were to do something like this, the utmost devastation you would have because you wouldn't see it coming.
Right.
And then granted, the parents said that, yeah, he had some issues in the past. He had trouble in school. He was diagnosed with ADHD, with autism. But to go to that length of what actually happened, and I didn't include it in this, but I did see also where the parents had several, like, parent-teacher conferences about what he wrote in his journal, which is why some of the other students did not feel safe with him around. And mom was kind of like not taking it that seriously.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I would think, a denial. Like, I don't want to believe my kid's doing that. Just like Dad said in his interview, I want to believe my son.
Right. And sometimes your son, I mean, you can know somebody with a dark sense of humor, you know, or
I mean, look at us.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, for research purposes, like maybe she saw that he was really interested in forensics and that that was just part of the way he thought. You know, some people are, I don't know.
And during her interview, she said that. She said, I thought he was interested in forensics because that was the career path he wanted to take, but I guess not.
Right. Wow. That is a chilling.
And he actually also said in his interview, my interest was so high in forensics that I was either going to kill somebody or I was going to become a cop. He said that.
Oh, God, help me. This is a chilling case. Oh, my Lord.
I know. Happy birthday, honey.
Happy birthday, Chris. Oh, my God. This is crazy.
Horrible.
This is horrible. Kat. I don't know what to say. Yeah, you just gave me nightmares, and you friggin' parked my ass underneath the same bridge. What the fuck?
I ran the bridge. Yep, the bridge. The bridge is behind us. This is where they found when they responded, and once he said where it was, they were like, "Oh shit, there it is. There's a part of an arm."
It's like a crazy ass scavenger hunt. That is insane. Well, well, thank you for doing this case that I've never heard of. I honestly never heard of this case.
I think I remember hearing something about parents finding a head in a kid's closet, but I never really knew what level and depth and just like evil and horrifying details it was about. Ugh.
Yeah.
So.
Oh my God.
There you go.
Thank you for doing that. That's Thank you.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you, Chris, for requesting it. Happy birthday. All right. Well, and you have old pictures and all this stuff is going to be on the Patreon.
Yeah. So the pictures of the crime scene I got where the body parts and stuff were found, some of them are like blurred out, so you can't really see the details, which I get. Like, you're respecting the dead, right? And they're really grotesque. I've got pictures of him during his interview that I snapshotted, but you can also search it on YouTube. You can watch the entire 2+ hours that I watched.
That's exactly what I'm going to do after this episode. I need to see that confession I just listened to. I need to see his face.
You see it. You see it. And it's just like, when I was researching, I'm just like, I was at a loss. Like, what the fuck?
Yeah. Disturbing.
Why? Like, it's completely disturbing. Like, and that, I mean, and that's why I wanted you to do a little bit of an intro on like the relation between mental illness, because was he mental? I mean, at some point you have to be like, yeah. But he was also a monster.
Yeah.
He really was a monster.
And once again, all doctors are not created equal. And a lot of the times, these doctors, if they have a diagnosis early in life, they could be correct. They could be incorrect. I don't know. I feel like they go undiagnosed for a very long time. They don't get treated. They don't get the treatment that they need or require, and bad things like this happen. And not for everybody, but he
did say also on the day of the murder, he did not take his medication. He did tell police that. Yeah. Would one day make it go to that extreme? Probably not.
No.
But it was an excuse.
This is beyond mental illness. I don't think. Yeah. I think this is a fascination he had. This is this is something that he wanted to achieve. Yeah, like that's something like on that level. I don't think it really had anything to do with, because there are so many people with mental illness that don't have these fantasies. I think this is something he wanted to do. Yeah, he was just preventing him. Maybe taking his medication kind of calmed those impulses down. Yeah. But yeah, I don't think one day without your medication, that stuff is out of your system. And I don't think that type of medication has a 24-hour lifespan in your system. I think it does happen a lot longer. Normally, when you go on certain medications that alter your mood, it takes about 3 months to work, because it
takes consistency. Yeah, it takes consistency. So missing one day isn't going to automatically like put you back at 0.
Wow.
Or negative in his case.
Okay. Oh, my Lord. Yeah. All right. Well, chatters, because we don't want to leave you hanging. For more on this case, please check out After That Crime Chat, only available on our Patreon.
And don't forget to follow us on all of our socials, Crime Chat with Nat and Kat, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, X. See what we got going on. And hopefully you've been liking our re-releases that we've been doing on that Saturday, where we take to kind of research and put our stories together. So let us know what you think about that.
Yes. Remember, Crime Chat with Nat and Kat, when you become a VIP chatter to our Patreon, you'll have access to bonus episodes, behind the scenes, bloopers, and free merch, and check out some merch in the works.
And be sure to check out our next episode. It is Natalie's story. Do you know what you're doing yet? Is it this bad?
No. God, no. I think no. This is like one of those, we need to have like a scale or like a rating system of the worst case we've gone over in the season, and this is definitely up there.
Yes, I agree. Well, either way,
you don't want to miss it.
You don't want to miss it. We'll see you next time, chatters. Bye.